Time to check in with State Representative Tacky Chan of Quincy for another Tacky Talk. And the only difference between last time and this time, Tacky, is now it's snowing outside.
Well, as of 2020, couldn't give us any more surprises, Joe. An early snowfall this year seems to be par for the course.
Now, last time we talked, I remember asking you to have a Halloween costume ready to go, and I see nothing, Tacky. I don't know.
Well, I couldn't find my Michael Morrissey campaign shirt, so at least I could have wore orange this morning, if nothing else.
Well, you need an orange tie then if you're gonna play Mike.
Well, precisely. So I haven't. I got BC High colors, and I got a bit of red today, but unfortunately, I couldn't find some old campaign wear to at least look Halloweenish.
How you doing?
Doing all right, I guess. I mean, I think like a lot of folks been kind of up and down, a lot of emotional up and downs given the COVID counts this past week, as well as trying to get some stuff done. We had a Division of Professional Licensure Public Hearing oversight yesterday. Actually, after this call, we have a very brief public hearing on some home rule petitions that's going through my committee, as well as trying to pull out some bills, local bills, home rule petitions that we've been working on. We've been the staff's with us, and I've been discussing about what we're going to do about the budget and how November may play out. The governor submitted another 1 month extension budget for lack of a better term, going into the month of November. So I suspect at some point in November, House and Senate leadership teams have to decide how they're going to operate a budget debate. And of course, we don't have any details yet. So one of the best things about our gig is we get to speculate how this is going to play out.
Yeah, exactly. And obviously, you're not back in chambers yet, right?
No, we're still not in chambers, which also leads to another question coming on swearing-in day. I know it's still a couple of months off, but swearing-in day is very, very special for new coming representatives and senators. I mean, you only get one swearing-in day, in honesty. Even if you lose or you leave, you come back again, it's still not the same as your first one. So, I kind of feel bad for them and their families if they can't create some accommodations. My suggestion would have been that you just allow the new members to be in the chamber with their families in a social distancing setting and conduct the ceremonial openings from there. We do not actually have to be sworn in together, nor do we actually have to be sworn in on that day.
Oh.
So I'm not sure what accommodations could be made, but there is some paperwork involved, very little bit of paperwork involved as well. So that I know it's kind of sounds like not a big deal to the audience, but for people who had a hard-fought campaign for the first time to come to the State House, this is pretty important for them.
Sure. Who actually administers the oath of office?
The governor or lieutenant governor.
Okay.
However, the clerk can also administer the oath of office. And part of the process of first day of session is to elect the Speaker of the House and to elect the clerk, which is recommended by the Speaker. So, we have to do ceremonial openings where delegations from the Senate and the House goes to the other two branches to indicate the session is ready to open, which is a ceremonial duty we do every single year. It's it's mostly fanfare, but again, tradition. So COVID, like a lot of things in our lives, has really changed, centuries-old tradition in the State House, as well as family traditions at home with the holidays coming up. So we'll see how it plays out. But at this stage, the staff and I have been talking about, what public hearings may look like next year. We just talked at the State House about migrating us over to Microsoft 365, 360. And Microsoft Networks and other technologies. We're making inquiries heavily about upgrading our technologies. My staff's technology at home is starting to fray. It was stuff, not because you have work office stuff. You don't expect to have a home office. So, like, I'm the only one with a color printer or a printer at all, because new generation of people do not need to have a printer, apparently.
No, not a lot of paper being shuffled among younger folks today, that's for sure.
Yeah, so there's stuff I discovered after. I was like, okay, it makes sense. You don't have to print stuff at home if you go to the office.
That's right. Yeah, I don't think they've written an actual check. Anybody under 30 probably ever.
No,
It's everything's done electronically, from banking to ordering takeout.
well, that's exactly it. And we have to adjust to this kind of, I have to adjust to their lifestyle because I have no idea what's going on. I feel old as a result. So, I mean, these are kind of the real life stuff that we've been encountering for the last several months. Now we're preparing to find out what we anticipate for the next several months. Um, so, my staff and I have had many conversations now about this and waiting for House leadership to make some decisions about, home office technology and things like that. So,
Yeah. Well, it seems pretty obvious that Massachusetts is in the second wave, second surge, I guess, if you will.
yeah, it's hard to argue against it. I mean, we're up to 5 days of 1 to 1,000 cases, new cases. We're definitely into a 7 day period with over 900 cases. Um, the governor has changed the numbers to show that these are first time testers that are getting cases, which means we're over 7% of first positive cases on daily average, which is a more accurate way to look at the data.
Yeah.
And I'm nervous because you watch the news, people coming in from Cincinnati and Virginia were being interviewed, being in Salem last week. So people are, again, asymptomatic carriers perhaps, and bringing it with them everywhere they go. And people wonder why I'm still overly cautious, limiting my travel, limiting my contact with people, and staying in one spot as much as possible, trying to get work done.
Yeah, I mean that is the remedy right now to this pandemic is isolation, is mask wearing, is hand washing. Those are all we can do. We can basically just run away from it at this point.
Yeah, unfortunately, that is correct. I mean, one of the psychological impacts for myself was the fact that everybody around me could potentially be dangerous.
Hmm.
And it's not because of malice or ill intent. It's just unknowing carriers. I remind everyone the governor's state of emergency is in place despite the facts things have relaxed over the past several months, regarding mask wearing and keeping social distancing. Obviously, all our medical facilities are preparing or have been prepared for a second wave since the first wave ended. So, it is a situation where at least we're better off in preparation than we were back last March. And we are spending, the state has spent, as well as federal money too, quite a bit of dollars to get ready for wave two. And as we talked about last time, you're spending money in a preparation for hoping it never happens.
Mm-hmm.
And this is becoming also a budgetary issue because we're going to have to engage in some kind of level funding and or budget cuts as we go into finish FY21 because of the fact we've been having a delayed budget. But COVID-19 is one part of the budget we can't cut. And this was not a cost built in to the original budget going into the new fiscal cycle. We've never, ever had to budget for COVID-19. So just to add another complication to the budget discussions is that we have a new fixed cost for at least the foreseeable future, which will have an impact on all our other programs in terms of shifting resources around. And it's not just COVID-19 medical. I mean, we're looking, obviously at the daycare services, the early education services, the school health services is an example of COVID-19 situation. Workforce development has now changed because of the nature of the impact of our economy. We passed a bill this week to extend unemployment benefits for people who were getting less than $100 a week, given the shift in the end of the PPP and the end of the PUA, and waiting for the feds to decide what they're going to do on a second, third, fifth, whatever you want to call it, stimulus package. The media confuses me. To me, they passed one bill. To me, that's one package, but they called it three. So I'm kind of like, all right, fine. I'm not going to get into a fight about semantics. But yeah, I mean, there's these people think COVID costs are strictly on the healthcare side. It's more than just that. It's the huge impact it's had on our lives, economically and personally.
Yeah, I know that there are more state grants available for small businesses right now. Here in Quincy, the planning department's assisting businesses in applying for those. So, that's another cost, obviously.
Yeah, and it's going to be a question of reallocation of existing resources. So, do we convert one funding source program into another to get through the short-term COVID-19 situation? And these are conversations that we're going to be having throughout the month of November, as everyone starts advocating for their solution to the budget crises, as well as district related and big picture related programs that quite crucial to get us the next year through COVID-19 impacts.
Yeah, it's the governor. It seems is trying to walk a fine line. It sounds like he doesn't want to do a total economic shutdown again. He's talking about more targeted. For instance, the ice skating rink closures that happened last week. But he's really seems like trying to avoid another economic disaster, if you will.
Every country in the world is making the same approach and potentially targeted lockdowns or targeted temporary closures. In specific areas or specific industries, they discover that there's a rise in COVID cases. So, in places like Japan, China, Korea, they've all contact traced to a certain locale to quote unquote find patient zero, ground zero, and proceed to figure out where everyone is and lock down everyone in the contrast area for a couple of weeks to see what passes. Again, contact tracing is so very important. If you get a call from a contact tracer, you definitely call them back right away. And if you have Google Maps on your phone, you can get a general idea where you've been. Keep receipts. You use a credit card nowadays. You have receipts to figure out where you were. Gives you a general time of day to the contact tracers, so we can start to figure out what the impact zone looks like. And honestly, you can save a life by participating in contact tracing.
Yeah, if you're unwittingly spreading the virus around and not knowing it, to be told that and to be able to deal with that, and stay away, yes, could potentially save somebody's life. Sure.
Yeah, and I think people really have to think that way.
Interestingly, I don't know if you heard, the vast majority of clusters, if you will, have been within families in the same household.
Not surprising on that front, because people, will go out, maybe pick it up from a small cluster in like a restaurant situation or a shopping plaza, and they bring it home, and it becomes mini super spreaders. So a lot of cases aren't originate directly from a market or a restaurant. And the reality is you had been around other people, and then you bring that home asymptomatically, or you come back mildly ill, and then it spreads like wild to your family. I mean, I compare it to like the norovirus. Those in the audience knows exactly what I'm talking about, where it takes almost no time at all that it spreads to your whole family. COVID-19 works under the same principle, of which diarrhea and stomach pain is one of the symptoms of COVID-19. So again, the much confusion, you have COVID-19 or a norovirus, or you have the flu, all the similar symptoms. But yeah, I'm not surprised by that, because, we all want to be near our family and friends. And it's hard for us to do that because you care about people and you need to see them.
Yeah.
But again, as we discussed earlier, you become an unwitting carrier from someplace you've been, which was a large crowd of people, most likely, in close contact, and here you are. It also reflects the lockdown too. Don't forget, a lot of the lockdown we had in March, April, May, and June would contribute to the reduction of impact cases. Like offices were very low because no one was in an office.
Right.
And also contact tracing, has been more vigorous since the beginning. And that numbers are still somewhat incomplete. According to Channel 5, contact tracing has only done 50% success rate because of people's lack of participation.
Oh. Is it a privacy issue people are concerned about?
I think people just don't want to participate.
No.
There's a degree of selfishness going on here, which the governor expressed a lot of frustration, and I do too, that they don't feel the need to be part of the solution. Everybody's right now part of the solution.
Well, the mayor of Boston wants every single Boston resident to get tested. Do you think that's something that has to happen on a statewide or even a national level?
Yeah, large-scale regular testing has been the most effective way to contain and isolate the virus if you know where it is. But it also requires a quarantine component. You can't go running around and you're positive. We saw that happen with a Bonehead, a Boneyard brewery, where someone was tested, went pub brew hopping because the bars are closed, excuse me, and then proceeded to be a little walking super spreader, and then came up positive. So even when you get tested, you have to sit tight for a while to get those results in. The expediency of the test has been a lot of question because of the nature of transporting test kits back to a point of lab, then get the information back out quickly. And there is a degree of margin of error on the rapid instant testing the
Right.
same day. So that's why the healthcare professionals doing 2 tests for confirmation negative to ensure that those are incorrectly negative tests get picked up on the second one. But I mean, places like China have conducted tests on like 9 million, 10 million plus people in a relatively short period of time, of a week or two, and people actually participate because of the danger of living in a super dense community, because the cities are monstrous and becoming super spreaders and shutting down their economy, and they don't want that. So other countries, populations, particularly in places that have experienced SARS, which is basically everybody in the Asian continent has SARS experience, recognize the danger here.
Mm.
Europe and Americas have never experienced a pandemic or epidemic type situation like this. So the attitude is somewhat different.
Yeah, I mean, the emphasis here seems to be more placed on a vaccine rather than a containment, type playing field, if you will.
Yeah, that's definitely the fault of the national government's message, the inability to maintain a consistent message, mixed messaging, unfortunately for political gain in the presidential cycle, as well as people making political gains in the local level. I mean, people are willing to put their political career ahead of your life is extraordinarily irresponsible. Massachusetts has done a very good job. The poll ratings have shown both the governor and the legislature have fairly high, very high favorability rating, over 70% of how have been handling the COVID-19 pandemic. The polling has also shown that people do not have a lot of confidence in the federal government, which has been an ongoing issue. And I think people here, for the most part, has been very good about following the rules. But again, you need more than just most of us. You need all of us to be following the rules to contain this virus.
What do you make of the state teachers union raising concern about the Department of Education telling communities that they should keep in-person learning going even if they're in the red zone?
Well, this again becomes a precautionary issue. Those school districts find the best way to keep everybody safe. And I do understand that a lot of us in the world are perfectly well functioning despite being immune compromised, being a cancer patient, a cancer survivor, having high blood pressure or diabetes or respiratory issues or any number of pre-existing conditions or immune compromised conditions. And it's a safety comfort issue as you in your profession, whether or not you're willing to go back to work. Again, children are carriers. They do have a lower death rate. They do have a lower symptom rate, but they can be carriers, which has always been my concern about, kids going to school and bring it home to you and your grandparents.
Right.
Just like they normally do in the common cold and the norovirus and other things they pick up at school. So, this becomes a greater degree of awareness by parents regarding the children's health, more so than ever. In the case of teachers, it's up to them and the school districts to decide, how best to handle this. In-person learning, and no one's going to argue that in-person learning isn't important. I mean, there's so many socialization components. There's more ability to get one-on-one, the more ability to do child safety because you can see the kids if there's an abusive household or malnutrition, the importance of school breakfasts. Some kids' best meal and only meal of the day is at school.
Mm-hmm.
And we passed a bill, breakfast before the bell, making a requirement of all school districts to actually provide a school breakfast program, especially for districts that have a large quantity of in the families that are below the poverty or near the poverty line. And Quincy is one of those communities that benefit from that
Mhm.
program. So, it is a real problem, right? I mean, how do you balance the needs of children and families against the healthcare of employees that provide, quite frankly, a crucial service to our community? So, that is a problem workplace that many workplaces are trying to figure out.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about the election, Tacky. And most interestingly, to me at least, is the way the results are going to come in, and the fact that might not have official results for at least a week or so afterwards.
Yeah, people don't realize that federal elections are not dictated by the federal government. It is a federal crime to mess up or tamper with or interfere with people to vote on the federal elections, as well as violation of state law. But cities, towns, counties, depending what state you're in, operate elections. And every state and county have different election rules of how to do ballot counting. So in Massachusetts, they're opening the ballots the day of election day, all the absentee and mail-in ballots. And here, the postmark day is still collected up to 7 days after the election, or essentially 7 business days ish. So this is not uncommon. People act like this is a new thing, but this is how they account for military ballots
Hmm.
and people working outside the country that are Massachusetts residents to ensure those ballots make it here. So yeah, it's gonna be a little bit of a delay of result, given the volume. But the primary was a great preparation for Massachusetts, where citizen towns had geared up for the primary to report ballots where there was no late ballots, to have them all counted the day of, open those envelopes and count that day of. So I do expect the majority of results regarding mail-in and early voting ballots to be counted on election day. Even the results come in very late at night in some communities, and there's also staffing up for cities and towns to do that. There will be some discrepancies, I think, because not because of any maliciousness, just because people have those postmark day of election arriving 3 to 7 days afterwards.
Right.
So, so those same treatment as you would have a military ballot, overseas ballot.
Yeah.
Count.
Curious to see what the actual in-person turnout will be on Tuesday, given the fact that I don't know, over 45% voters have already voted.
I think it'll still be very substantial,
Hmm.
nationally and locally. I do think that it won't be these long lines because, as you pointed out, such a large proportion of the population voted early or voted by mail. So, but I still think it'll be a very good turnout. I can see close to a 70% turnout statewide. There is such passion to vote this year nationally that I think we'll see one of the highest participation rates by number, if not by percentage, in the United States. Obviously, comparing numbers in elections are kind of complicated because the population keeps growing. So
Right.
if you say, by percentage, when JFK was on the ballot, was the highest percentage of voters that occurred in Quincy.
Yes.
Well, I don't think we ever achieved those percentages again.
No, that
But
was, I think, in the high 80s, wasn't it? Or mid 80s, something like that.
yeah, enormous.
Yeah.
But I mean, raw number wise, I think you're going to see an incredible number of raw numbers on voting this year, which is good. I mean, I'm a big advocate for voting. I mean, elected officials, pro democracy, people should participate, and we encourage it.
Yep. Did you do the mail-in option?
I did. I mailed mine back within a day of receiving it back in October. It arrived in the city clerk's office within 5 days, according to the online tracking system.
Mhm.
If you did a mail-in ballot, very much encouraged that you check the online tracking system, which right now I've forgotten what the website is. It's on my Facebook, however. We did.
I can tell you, it's trackmyballotma.org.
There you go. Very easy website that I should have remembered. But I put that, yeah, so that's also on my social media.
.gov, pardon me. Even I was wrong. .gov.
Trackmyballotma.gov.
Correct.
So you can there confirm, make sure your ballot's arrived. If you don't see it on that list, you can always contact the city clerk and obviously vote in person. People have inquired about can they drop the ballots in the polling locations Tuesday? The answer from the city clerk's website is no.
Right.
Bring those ballots directly to the city clerk's office or the drop box in front.
Yes.
During working hours, they don't mind taking your ballot inside.
Yep. Nikki Crispo tells me that there will be a police officer stationed at the ballot drop box outside City Hall election night, right at 8 p.m. And it will be closed, right at 8 p.m. and then emptied out. So you have right up until the last minute.
Yeah, and you have today, Friday, which obviously this can be aired over the weekend. So you still have Monday and Tuesday to head to the city clerk's office for your mail-in ballot.
Sure. Speaking of population, Tacky, did you hear about the lawsuits against the U.S. Census Bureau? Several states, including Massachusetts, with some irregularities in the census counts.
I've not read that article yet. I am aware that there's census concerns and voting concerns in places like Louisiana, which has been smacked by hurricane after hurricane after hurricane. And those are very low count states with large minority populations in them and low income. And the hurricanes have impacted census countability as well as early voting capacity down there. So I've not heard and seen any discrepancies yet, but it's kind of hard to figure it out. It is a federal program. So I'm going to have to read that article and see what's going on.
Yeah, the allegations, according to some civil rights groups, are that census takers were pressured to indicate that they had completed a count, even though they had not. That's the basis of the suit anyway. Massachusetts is included in it.
Yeah, I need to read the article. That if that is true, the allegation is true, that's enormously disturbing to politicize or treat it like a what do you call it, the door-to-door salesman scheme, where people are pressured going door to door to show they've shown up and collect their per household payment. And we've seen actually this pressure done in a different way regarding door-to-door energy changeover. So, you get to choose your electrical supplier. And Matt Quincy is actually one of the victims of that, where there was a lot of pressure done by third-party companies on behalf of electrical suppliers to pressure you into signing up when you don't want to, or they start messing around the paperwork to fraudulently sign you up.
Sure.
So, if this is true and the federal government agency is pressuring workers on such an essential service, that could result in undercounting. And that just hurts all of us.
Right. We talk about the ballot questions again. I know we've done this in the past, but there's an awful lot of money being spent on these questions, just given the TV ads that we're being bombarded with for this cycle, for sure.
Well, how much question one can you take at this point?
Well, yeah, both sides are spending, tens of millions of dollars on that one.
It is rather grotesque. And as I was telling other media outlets, I can point out which is a false ad and which is a true ad at this stage, and which is a half-truth. The truth of the matter is, on money, both sides in question one are being driven by large corporations. People are thinking that independent repair shops are funding those commercials. Well, that's a flat-out lie. The large chain automobile repair shops, as well as third-party part manufacturers, so these are the generic part manufacturers for cars, are funding this entire program. Question. The opposite side, of course, is the car manufacturers. I don't have to tell you who they are. They're funding the opposition campaign. So this David and Goliath is a complete myth to start with. So if you feel like you're anti-corporate and you vote yes on one, well, you're voting pro-corporate. Sorry to tell you, folks.
Just the different corporations.
Pretty much. So let's blow that myth out of the water first. Second myth is that we don't have right to repair. That is also a myth. We do have right to repair. There is a statute in the book since 2014 to ensure that all third-party repair shops are able to get that information, the codes and equipment to ensure they can repair your car. On the other side, some of the other inaccuracies, I think, descriptions going on is the fact that you can. This is about just car repair data. Well, yes and no. The statute proposal, the ballot proposal, has a very confusing section 2, and the idea that people can break in and get data is a little confusing exactly what data we're talking about.
Mm.
And, there is a real concern about whether or not in the future can third-party repair shops get repair data. That's a good question because under the statute, I believe that any changes in technology, the car manufacturers still have to provide that equipment. The concern is off-site technology, meaning technology not at the repair shop. And that includes wireless technology. So your car computer system actually continuously checks your car for any kind of issues and transmitted that information directly to the car manufacturers, which is why you don't see recalls happening after a car accident. It actually occurred before a car accident because the car is informing the car manufacturers, hey, there is a potential faulty system here that you probably should start looking at. And the engineers see it and determine that the car is correct regarding, I know what the car is telling us what to do. There is a problem and they do the recall. So that is true. I mean, your car data is being transmitted to the manufacturers. But the manufacturers guard that data preciously because if it's been misused, consumer confidence goes down and no one's going to buy their cars. The idea that you create a uniform program for all the cars is actually problematic for the manufacturers because that's intellectual property protection information in the car operations. It's in the computer box. And I like to remind folks that if on the internet and data security, if you can get out, someone else can get in.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's an issue,
both ways, right?
It's always both ways. It is not mission impossible where you go in, sneak into a big computer system and plug in USB port to make the computer do stuff.
Yeah.
You terminal at home through a worm virus. Don't open email you don't know. Can look for specific things on your computer to access the internet when you access the internet, piggyback off to break into a system, which is the Equifax situation. Equifax was most likely a computer virus that was submitted into a terminal of one of their customers. But the other side of Equifax did not up their software when they knew that that virus was active out there.
Right.
So there's that stuff. And then, there is no requirement to get permission to get this data. It pretty much states in Section 2 that car repair shops can get your data without your permission anytime they want, whenever they want, through a web portal.
And you go in for an oil change, for instance, and they could, I guess, dump the whole thing down into their computer system, right?
Actually, it's worse than that. They can access your information remotely without being in the car shop.
Oh, okay.
So they can look at your repair history, any codes from your car, and so forth. And there's no requirement they have to protect that information. So they could sell that data to anybody. And your local repair shop may or may not participate in that, but you also have these, as I described, large chain shops, including generic parts manufacturers. So if you're a generic part manufacturer and you can just open a repair shop anywhere in Massachusetts as a subsidiary company, they have that data. And you want some scary stuff, an insurance company could open an independent repair shop and get that data. So if you want your insurance company to know your car issues, I think most of us generally try to shy away from letting them know. So, these are kind of things I've been thinking about because the reality is that this question is going to pass.
You think it will?
Oh, I definitely think it will. The voters will approve this, and as the chair of the committee that has to oversee these issues of consumer protection, and they will come to me if I'm still the chairman next year. I got to figure out how to get to the goal of changing technology for third-party manufacturer parts, repair shops to get the repair data under any circumstances and protect your consumer data from these third-party repair shops.
Okay, so this will have to require legislation regardless, I guess it sounds like.
It sounds like we may have to do some law suspensions and revisit the issue. So though you're watching out there, this data issue is legitimately a concern. I've done data work on privacy during the Equifax breach, and I did this more than a decade ago, the first major breaches, back when I worked for Michael Morrissey's office. So, and I did some IT work back in my college days. And the major thing is that we know how foundationally software works. It's amazing how it follows through the decades that the basics don't change that much.
Okay.
The complexities of what's built on top of the foundation is very complex, but the basic concepts aren't. So, you're going to hear a lot of these proponents that's going to win this ballot question saying we're not following the intent, but they don't have your interest in heart. They're interested in making their money. Again, it's big corporate. And I'm going to have to be charged to find out how to protect you from the proponents.
Okay, well, we'll be talking to you about that in the future, I guess.
Yeah, my head is spinning. I'm going to have constituent calls telling me that I'm a bad person for not supporting proponents. So I'm actually trying to protect you from the proponents.
Yeah. Speaking of complex, question two is a spider web of complexity.
Yeah, well, ranked choice voting. So basically, you can have multiple people in the ballot in November, and you assign a point number to each one. So you can vote for every single person, ranked by 1, 2, 3 on your choices, and the one with the highest point total wins. So it is not a total vote, total win. It is a point total. So in theory, you could actually win the vote without actually winning the point, winning the actual number one vote count.
Right.
So that is a bit of a myth on question 2 of the commercials. It is absolutely possible to win a race coming with second most votes, but the highest vote total. That is very feasible. It doesn't help folks that want to be a write-in candidate. If you're not on the ballot, you cannot write-in candidate.
Okay.
Which I find alarming, because everybody should have a right to run for office, even if you decide as a write-in candidate. So that option is essentially taken away from people. And then, and it's about what kind of democracy you want to have, and how do you want to teach voting. Most of us are fairly straightforward. Pick 1 out of 2. I think picking 3 out of 6 in the city council race for a large, I think is a little hard to explain. The same thing on school committee. I mean, even pick 2 out of 3 for county commissioner is a little harder to explain. But I mean, you also can just pick 1 out of 3. You don't have to pick 3 total.
Right.
The point system pretty much requires you to pick all the points, even if you don't like all the candidates. So that is also quite troubling, that you may be forced to assign a point value to someone you don't like.
Yes.
Which can also result in that person winning, because you participated on someone you didn't want to vote for.
And do you have to vote that way if this passes? Would you have to do ranking, or could you just vote normally, if you will?
When you listen to the commercials, the answer is yes.
Yeah.
Because I'm not sure what happens if you don't. The proposal is I'm not entirely clear how that works.
Okay, so neither am I. That's why I was asking. I've read it through several times, in the red booklet, and I can't get that answer out of that description.
I can't either. And the proponent advertising is in tens of millions of dollars from out-of-state entities. This is not the first time out-of-state entities have done this. But based on the advertising, my understanding is yes, you are going to be forced to vote for someone you don't want to vote for.
Okay.
By assigning a point to them. And that, to me, is appalling. People should not have to vote for someone they don't want to vote for.
Right. We should clarify, it's not for presidential elections, at least, right?
Well, this is the scam here. They exempt municipal elections and presidential elections. So
right.
The city council is being exempted from this there, but subject to me and the Congress.
State elections, yeah.
So who are they trying to influence through this ballot question, these out-of-state entities? What is their true purpose? As I was telling other media sources, one of the things I'm very troubled by, and the Boston Globe pointed it out, is that these ballot issues in the Constitution was to give citizens the ability to lobby around the legislature on issues important to them, to get attention to the legislature if it's important to them. But instead, it's become a mechanism for big business and corporations to pay people to go get their signatures.
Yeah.
And then spend tens of millions of dollars in advertising in Massachusetts to mislead the public on what it is, bypassing people like me who do legislative research to find out the pros and cons, both sides of the issues, or more than both sides of the issues sometimes, and the various interest parties to try to figure out what is in the best interest of all parties involved, including people who have not said nothing, namely, constituents, that haven't expressed an opinion. They're relying on their elected officials to do the homework and make the best judgment possible. Even if you disagree with our decisions, we do our homework to try to figure out what is the best possible solution to a problem presented. Is there a problem with the voting system currently? to address ranked choice voting. Is there a problem regarding not getting your car repaired at a third-party repair shop? To date, I've had no one tell me they've had a problem. People advocate for something, but they've not described to me whether they go to one, they have a problem, but they go to another one, there is no problem.
Right.
And same thing in voting.
Yeah.
You know,
Seems, solutions to problems that don't exist right now.
welcome to a lot of things people advocate me for. And I hate it when they ask them, so, have you ever had a problem? And the answer's 9 times out of 10, no. But it's still advocating for it anyway.
Yeah, it does make you bring into question their motivation for sure. Yeah.
Well, I think the audience sometimes are curious what our lives are really like in the State House and how we interact with constituencies and special interest groups. And they have this perception this is like the West Wing or, House of Cards-ish, and, big money runs everything and so forth. And I'm not going to lie and say there isn't a, major financial interest that comes to Beacon Hill. But at the same time, though, we're very conscientious of our constituencies as part of a decision-making process. And yes, constituents do not like the decisions you make. You're never going to get 100% consensus in your districts. This is just a fact of life. And you're probably thinking, oh, everybody supports this. Well, you don't talk to everybody. I, unfortunately, am subject to everybody coming at me, for lack of a better term, nowadays they can't see me. But when I'm back out there talking to folks, they're going to express an opinion on the matter, which should be different from the person before them.
Yeah.
As well as emails, postcards, and telephone calls. So, I think, gives a better perspective for electeds that get a lot of feedback from folks beyond just the carbon copy emails I get, which just copy and paste, or they do a robo email to lobby me. It's a good perspective that someone comes up with a different example than the person before me regarding how a public policy change can mean something real to their lives.
Yeah, it's a good reminder for folks that they do have a voice. In their legislation, at least in their local districts, they can be heard. It's not big folks feel powerless sometimes to do anything. You do have a voice.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think most people don't realize I can't recognize which one is a robo email, which one is not.
Right.
And I still get sometimes handwritten mail come to my office.
Sure.
So, I do look at that stuff, but it's a volume issue. And I don't want to sound like I'm pining for the old days. But I mean, when I first started this business, with Michael Morrissey in '95, God, I'm old. It was mostly just phone calls. Surprisingly, we had this down to a science. It was phone calls during people's coffee hours and lunch breaks. Always, that hour between noon and 2, always that hour, around 4 o'clock, always at around 10 a.m. where you get this flood of phone calls.
Mm-hmm.
Now, emails are coming at me at like 4 in the morning.
Sure.
And a lot more robo emails. We used to get postcards. People actually took the effort to somehow get a postcard, put notes on it, sign their address, write clearly. People used to actually have great penmanship, write clearly so I could identify them as a constituent. And then we could log into our system and then prepare responses as we continue to research on the matter. But those are not those days anymore. Everything's trying to, advocate via Facebook, which I don't even see them all because it just gets ridiculous how much tagging goes on and which one is like a scam marketing tab. You know what I'm talking about, you're a Facebook user. And which one is a legitimate concern, which is why I discourage over and over again here trying to contact me via social media.
Right.
I don't think people really appreciate the sheer amount of like abuse I take regarding non-relevant stuff hitting me. When you start robo emailing, the volume here is 100 times more, it feels like, than the old days of getting postcards or phone calls.
Sure. We're approaching the end of the hour, but since we're on the topic, how do folks reach out to you, Tacky?
Well, again, I recommend the phone call, 617-722-2014, 617-722-2014. Just head any staff person's voicemail. We're picking up voicemail on a regular basis. You can email me at tackey.chan, tackey.chan @mahouse.gov, tackey.chan @mahouse.gov. We'll get that information. However, you may get faster information if you look at my social media at State Representative Tacky Chan, as well as my website at tackychan.org. If maybe find your answer there before you have to contact my office and save you time. So we also encourage that as well. If you don't find your answer there, obviously definitely contact us. And if it's very sensitive, we very much encourage people to definitely leave a voicemail. Because the idea that I'm sitting there nonstop every 3 seconds checking my email, I don't know who can do that, given the volume I get. And I do check it myself.
All right. Well, next time we talk, it'll be a new month. The election will be over, and hopefully all the snow will be gone.
Hopefully it's gone by Sunday. But I'll be seeing you for apparently 5 whole minutes or less on election night. So again, I'm expecting you and Mark to go through the speed round of questioning in my case.
Yes.
I do want to thank everybody for voting this year. I thank everyone for participating in the census. I'm very proud and honored to have the opportunity to serve the 2nd Norfolk District in the city of Quincy for 2 more years in 2021 and 2022. It's I know despite the strange time and all, and hopefully some of this information has been helpful to your audience that I talk about, despite the fact I was wrong about the census like 7 times regarding what the deadline was. People now realize my pain in real life situations and information collecting. It's been a wonderful 2 years despite the situation in my mind, and I'm working on your behalf and look forward for another 2 years. Please vote. By the time you see this, there's still time to vote. Go vote. And, I'll speak to you in a week after the election, and we can debrief what I think happened.
Look forward to that, actually, yeah.
So.
All right. Thank you so much, Tacky.
Take care, Joe. I'll talk to you next week, or talk to you 2 times next week.
That's right. All right. Be well.